أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ورضي الله تعالى عن السادة التابعين وعلماء العاملين وأئمة الأربعة المجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Alhamdulillah, I'm asking you, my beautiful brothers and sisters, as you come on in this room to share the video, because you're in for a special treat. I think it's safe to say that you're in for that good fire, and you're in for some good fire coupled with comprehensive information. So share the video, share the information, and also get out your pen and papers and whatever you use to take out to take notes with. Well, alhamdulillah. Uh, before we begin, I want to mention a verse from Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter number 49 of the Quran, called the inner apartments. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa kaba'ila li ta'arrafu. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Inna Allaha alimun khabir. O mankind, indeed we created you from a male and a female, and we made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know one another. Indeed, the most honorable of you to Allah is the one who has the most taqwa, and Allah is the all-knowing, all-aware. In that verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says He did all of this. In other words, He created us from a male and a female, and He made us into uh, small ethnic groups and larger ethnic groups for the purpose of knowledge or becoming familiar. If you look at that verse and the commentary of that verse, you will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He not only wants us to know other people, but He wants other people to know us. And included in the meaning of that verse is what people used to call knowledge of self. Knowledge of self. In fact, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Ta'alumu min ansabikum ma tasiluna bihi arhamakum." Learn from your own lineages. Learn from your own lineages enough to connect you to your most remote relative, or to connect the family ties. And so you find in this hadith a command from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to have knowledge of self. Interestingly enough, this hadith is used in uh, Ibn Kathir's tafsir of this same verse in his explanation of what it means, li ta'arrufu, so you may know one another. And so I wanted to begin with this because a lot of us are still caught up in acting off of old, worn out, Islamically unfounded propaganda that states or has us thinking that it's somehow sinful or blameworthy to be having these type of conversations, to be having knowledge of self. And it just goes to show how much we've been tricked and lied to, and the imperative of learning about our own history, learning about, you know, these things is an imperative sitting right there in plain sight in the Quran and the Sunnah. In fact, other people, when they've used this verse, they use this verse to tell us not to have knowledge of self. That's the amazing thing about it. So again, I can give, and I have given several khutbahs on this topic alone, but it's not for me to be doing the talking tonight. I'm going to be taking notes with the rest of you. So I just want to introduce, you know, our gracious host of hosts, our beloved Imam Otis. Imam Amin Muhammad, sitting up there on the top left of your screen.
What you talking about, Willis?
Alhamdulillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Inshallah ta'ala, I just got a message from Imam Abu Muslima. He said, Assalamu alaikum, forgive me, I am exhausted. He has a really busy schedule over there. So inshallah, we're going to have to reschedule him. But alhamdulillah, we'll still go on with what we have to do. Please make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him strength.
Ameen.
And continues to strengthen him in his work, inshallah ta'ala. But we'll reschedule with him, inshallah. But we have many things to discuss. So may Allah make it easy. And please, everyone, pardon him. Those who came specifically to hear him, please pardon him. And inshallah, he'll come back. Now, so today we're going to go into several aspects of our history. Last time we were together, we talked about the movement in Detroit, and we talked about Deuce Muhammad Ali and Sati Majid, and we talked a little about Professor Ezudine and the Deenullahi Arabic Universal Institute Association. And we want to move now to talk about what was going on in New York with the State Street Masjid and Sheikh Daou Faisal, and how that all panned out and the movements that came into that. So our intention is, inshallah, that we would talk about all the different movements that came in Islam and the Black community, how it all worked itself out. And that was an important aspect that we wanted to have with Imam Abu Muslima, that we would talk about the Salafi community and what came out of that and how it reached it is today. And he was a very important figure in that whole movement. And other things in his background with Beitul Quraysh and with the early stages of the Dawah in New Jersey and Islamic movements and communities in New Jersey, and how that affected its connect to New York and around the country. And he also gave me, when we had a meeting the other day, we talked, he gave me some interesting things that I didn't know about conferences that were held in Atlantic City with Imam Jamil Alameen. Did you know about that, Akil?
Mm-hmm.
So he told me all about that, and it was interesting. I didn't know, I wasn't here during that time, but there was some things that happened in that. So there's a lot of things to flush out, inshallah, historically.
And who was in the mix of that stuff too at
Say
that
that again?
time. I said another pivotal person, Imam, that was during that time as well was Amir Abdullah Yashin. Can you hear me?
Right. And Imam Khalid Yassin as well.
Yes.
And Imam Alameen Abdul Latif.
No, and from Kamatidin, yes.
Yeah, so all of those were figures. So we want to get to that, and inshallah, when he comes, we can connect all this stuff and see where we go. But let's start off where we was talking about from the last gathering. Inshallah.
So from my recollection, from what we were talking about, basically we were just kind of finishing up on the tail end of the formulation of Deenullahi with Professor Ezudine, rahimahullah. So as I was stating, once Professor Ezudine came back, and then they start having those meetings, and the units of Deenullahi was established in different cities, you started getting brothers from different groups that was bolstering the Deenullahi to what it was. So these brothers had been, probably involved with the Moor Science Temple, or they had been involved with the Lahori contingent of the Ahmadiyya. And so they were all kind of working together, but they were in different cities. So you had a really strong unit in Youngstown, Ohio. You had a strong unit in Detroit. Of course, Buffalo is well known, and then in uh, Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia. But there was one in Jacksonville, Florida as well, but it wasn't as strong as the other ones that were more centered on the East Coast. So um, with that, what they started doing is they started propagating Islam, but they were not like big da'is, right? And the reason why I'm illustrating that as a point, because then that kind of changes when we get to like the Dar al-Islam movement, right? So if people came to Islam, if they were seeking Islam, they would, kind of educate them. But one of the things that I must point out that happened to the Dinulahi community, particularly in Detroit during the 40s and late 30s, was the repression from the government, right? They couldn't even hold their meetings. If they were like to say we're going to have Juma or a meeting or something, they would have to call, last minute to try to do it, or else the government would ransack it, and they would ransack a couple of their locations. Yeah, because at that time, um, the there was a very big fear that the Muslim contingents amongst the black people would form like you don't hear this terminology anymore, but they used it a lot back then, a fifth column within the country, meaning a indigenous group that would help enemies of America because they were dissatisfied with their lot in America, right? So they were very fearful of that. And one of the things it was they were fearful that the American blacks would possibly side with Japan, right? It was a big fear of that. So particularly with the Muslims, they harassed them. You know what I'm saying? And that's why most of like when you look at even with the Nation of Islam, the reason why so many of them got accosted was because it was tied to the draft evasion and stuff like that, right? And the reason why I'm mentioning this because this goes to how governmental subversion, right, and redirection and repression has always had an impact on the Islam in America because of what they're doing. It's not happenstance that certain things happen or certain things go a certain direction. It's because, and I'm not saying that like, they are omnipotent and, if Allah decree it to go away, that's where it's going to go. I'm saying that they have actively been repressive towards Muslims in this country. And that's not even from the cultural aspect of people pushing back, but just the government being fearful of what was being taught. So the Ahmadiyya communities, they didn't really face that because right off the bat, they were like, hey, certain things that was off the board in terms of things that would conflict with what America wants. So make sure you don't be involved in no politics. You're not involved in anything discussing about the military or speaking against the military. Don't speak against the government. Like all of that was like off the table, right? But we have a activist side of us as a black people that we push back up against what we're encountering. So that part impacted the Islam. So again, like I said, going back to these units, you had brothers who were Muslim, but then they would, break away from those units or they wouldn't work. I don't want to say it was like contentious. They just decided to go in a different direction, right? So you had brothers who all considered Professor Ezudine as a mentor, but they would go in a slightly different direction. So you had brothers like Imam Samsam, he went on Hajj in like the 1940s, right, and established an organization in Detroit. You had brothers like Sheikh Daou Faisal, right, who established his mission as far as it was documented. We know in the 50s in Brooklyn, right? And so, but they didn't go out into the communities as like grassroots and try to pull people in, because they became like reticent of who they were pulling in, because they didn't know what the government would do. So they were like, okay, you come to me and talk to me about Islam, I'll talk to you about Islam, but they wasn't going out proselytizing in a big way. That resurgence of that happened later on, and we'll talk about that. But
can you remind me of the connection between Sheikh Daou Faisal and Professor Ezudine?
so Professor Ezudine, he was a mentor to that Sheikh Daou Faisal, Imam Wali Akram. They were younger than him, and they formed that contingent of brothers who, although they were like kind of connected, they all had different ideas as to how to best help the people, right? So if you look at Imam Wali Akram's 10-year plan, right? He had a whole thing with not just about the expression of Islam, but having a strong cooperative economic component where everyone benefits, but then also working towards obtaining land, right? They had a agrarian state of mind in terms of getting land and establishing Islam, and also being able to provide for themselves separately from the government, right? So that was the whole motivation behind Jabu Arabia in Buffalo, right? Well, outside of Buffalo, right? But again, Imam Wali Akram, that was his plan. It was a economic component in addition to the Islamic thrust that he was moving towards, right? Because you have to be, if you're going to live in your own way, if you're going to carve your own space, you have to have the economic component to it. You just, it's just no way around that, right? And so when you start thinking in that terms, and you start looking in terms of yourself being a people, right? You have to have land. So you'll see these themes repeat themselves, right? Even with Sheikh Daou Faisal, right? Rahimullah, he also, following in the footsteps of Professor Ezudine, attempted to establish a space, you know, outside of the city, in a rural space where they can establish Islam and establish a community, right? This has been a repeated attempts to do that, right? And so, but one of the other things was that Sheikh Daoud, he also engaged the United Nations also, right? He also did that. And so he was more, not so much specifically targeting the grassroots. And I think that's where the departure in terms of the Dar al-Islam began to form, because originally the brothers who were a part of the State Street Masjid, or who attended, the black people that attended, they were mostly musicians or artists, right? They wasn't really like, you know, the home body type guys, right? These were more like artists, you know, dealing with jazz and music or poetry and various things of that nature, right? So they were kind of hip, you know. So, but they would meet, and then they would, you know, want to learn and discuss more about the Quran. So initially, that the first sort of in 1962 coming out of State Street. And I know some people say, well, it kind of morphed out of State Street, and but it wasn't really that way. They didn't initially say, okay, we're just going to turn our back on State Street. It didn't really start out that way. It started out as the brothers want to meet and have additional study sessions going over the Quran, right? In, you know, the manner that they could, right? They would read different ayat, look at different hadiths, or just plain out just discuss it, right? Because there was no
Hey,
real,
Akil,
yeah,
can I stop you for 1 second?
yeah.
Like you mentioned Sheikh Daoud and State Street and you mentioned the United Nations. That famous picture with Sheikh Daou, Faisal, and Malcolm X, that's at the United Nations, right?
Right. But he also used to engage them and have discussions about humanity, right? He never really discussed civil rights. He discussed human rights, right? And
Right.
humanity and how you treat people humanely. This is was his engagement in that. But he wasn't really like, okay, we're gonna take it to the streets and kind of stick it to the man type. It wasn't that type of thing, And so what happened is that the younger brothers who are younger than him, right, who are coming in and accepting Islam, they began to, started thinking more like, okay, we need to do something. And so as those study groups in 1962 started getting bigger, right, they started moving to different locations to accommodate how many people was coming to study. And
Right.
then,
So I want to ask you, how how many different famous people who may have had their start or at least their early days and were connected with State Street Master that we know about?
there were several, right? And there were several, but you when you have, like, I think Imam Rajab Mahmoud Rahimullah, I think he was the first one to become like the leadership of the Dar al-Islam prior to um, Imam Yahya Abdul Karim. Before him, it was Imam Rajab Mahmoud, right? Rahimullah. And also who came out of there is
Abu?
Imam Isa.
Abu.
Dr. York.
Farouk.
Pardon me?
Abu.
Farouk.
Abu.
Farouk.
Why y'all do this to me, man? See, I knew that was a setup. I knew it was a setup. I should have known. I felt it. I didn't know. I felt it.
No, I think it's important that
Right.
the people see the connections, regardless of which way they went,
Right.
later on. I think it's important that people know the connections there.
Right. When you see a suit, it has a root.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It was just low hanging fruit.
I see. But that's the point, right? But the thing about it, and I'll say this, see, I saw Dr. Rasul walk into this, and now I'm walking to it. But what I would say, I would say that it was a distinction. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Right?
Imam, tell us what that is.
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right?
No doubt.
So
No
you got to
doubt.
explain that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this book, this was published when I was a real kid, 1980.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 1980. And this is the Ansar's biography of Sheikh Dawood.
Subhanallah.
So the whole thing is about Sheikh Dawood and Ansar community.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you.
Hear me? Can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
can
hear
you
you.
hear us?
I can't
He
hear you
can't
guys
hear us.
anymore.
All right, go out and come back in while we talk about Farouk. Imam Isa. So this pamphlet is all about, State Street Mosque and the Ansar community, and it got pictures and everything in there, and that connection. So So he got to explain this connection. So when those who try to deny it, those pictures are there. So that is and actually, if you look,
And in one of his books, he had a picture with a whole bunch of people from State Street Masjid, and he
yeah,
was in there, and a lot of the founders of the Dar were in there. Whatever, is that a real picture, or is that one of the ones he doctored up?
I wasn't there. I don't know. I mean, but see, here you go. You can see those pictures, and that's him and Sheikh Daou there at the answer. Let me bring him back in. You clear, Akil?
Yeah, I'm good now. Alhamdulillah.
So you see those pictures?
Yes.
So that is, so now since he mentioned that, go ahead, we're gonna leave you to explain. Hey, so, I'm waiting. Right?
Okay, so what I could make of it, right?
So remember that's 1980, but that was happening in the 70s.
Right. So one of the things, right, that Dr. York had a relationship with Sheikh Daou, right? This is controversial, right?
Wait.
Here's why, right?
You have a documentations here.
Right. So because
this is a clear picture. Look at that one.
Yes.
And that was before Photoshop.
Before.
Way before Photoshop.
I still have some of those books from him.
This is 1974.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Imam Fahim just said in the comments his Photoshop game was ahead of its time.
No, but seriously though, but what was happening though is as he was, gaining prominence, Sheikh Daoud, he would help the Muslims. There was never like a split or departure from the brothers that was in the Dar. Those brothers still had good relationships with him. That should be understood. It was just that they were younger, more energetic, and they were looking at an approach to Islam that was more demonstrative in the streets than what Sheikh Daoud was doing. And which is understandable because he was an older man. You know what I'm saying? Whereas they were younger, they had families, and they wanted to establish Islam. That was the whole thing, and so being with that, the Dar was like in its basic stages, you still have different people with different ideas. There was no, structured training, what I'm saying, in terms of knowledge. Then, but once they got going and then they established the Bayah, what I'm saying, then that was something different. What you about to show us now, Imam?
And this is the certificate. Let me make that. Sheikh Daoud gave to the Ansars to officially make them a part of the Islamic mission of America that he established.
That's the first.
You just glossed over this history, so we want you to go back and talk about it.
Hey, you remember last time I had him on? I kept trying to bring him up to this history, and he kept going back. Nah, he keep going forward. You got to put on the gas.
Here's why. Because
we have documented facts.
But here's
you got to explain this history.
Okay, so
wait a minute. Remember, I told you history is not fair when you leave out what you don't like.
Right, but no, it's not what I don't like, right? It's that if you go, because you're gonna have brothers, right, that probably gonna eventually email me or call me, right, and they're gonna say, "Hey, why do you get on there?" and then make it seem like Sheikh Daoud was endorsing Dr. York in the stuff he did. Because at one point, right, there was one point where there was, and I had this from two different sources, right, that said that Dr. York tried to take over the match. They just flat out tried to take over it, and they helped Sheikh defend it. So I try to, if there's something where there's conjecture and it's like a fitna, right? If it's not central to the discussion, I try because it's
I'm
because
so sorry. I'm sorry,
you like that one, man? If it's not central to the discussion.
Wait a minute.
Right, because okay, let's go to it.
Wait a minute. Let me just ask you. I
Right.
understand the brothers,
Right.
but this is history.
Mhm.
How do you take documented evidences? Sheikh Daoud is there multiple times with pictures, with the children, all of that. How can you just brush that under the rug?
Okay, let me give you. Okay, I'll give you another example.
Wait a
Right?
minute, because you mentioned something earlier, and I'm just because here's what I believe. Let me preface what I'm going to say.
Okay, go ahead.
History is an excellent teacher
Facts.
if you're honest with it.
Facts.
And history, I like to say it like this, are lessons and advices that help us live in the present and prepare us for the future.
No doubt.
So it's like I hate this about what we do. When it's for us, I'm not saying you, I'm talking about us as so-called Sunni Muslims. When it's for us, we'll put it and we'll make it nice. But when it's against us, we'll try to push it away. So for instance, we would attack one aspect, right, and not deal with it as it is. And then when it comes to other aspects, we'll gloss over certain things. And what I'm saying, no matter how we feel about history, we got to tell it as it is. Let the cards lay where it's at. Now, if you want to challenge the facts after we present it as it is, then that's important, right?
No
but
doubt.
You can't deny with all this evidence that they end up with the land that he initially had. They end up with that land. We were on that land. So that's not right. So that's something happened. What happened? Why they lost the land? And how did he get it? And why did Sheikh Daoud support him having it? Because he did. He did come to the Eid. He did write certificates for their children.
No doubt.
All of this is true stuff.
But Sheikh Daoud, right? Sheikh Daoud, even when he was he would travel all around the country, right? Sheikh Daoud would travel all around the country engaging Muslims. LA, Pittsburgh.
So what you're telling me is in his mind, this is important what you just said.
Yeah, right.
That they were Muslims to him.
Yes. No doubt.
So look, now we want to move to a question.
Look, many people at one point, right? Many people viewed what Imam Isa was doing as premier. Like people can say, like, backtrack it and say, revisionist, because one of the things happened. I'm gonna tell you the main thing that really got the whole thing right. And I've heard people say this as I've talked to different people, was the fact that he had all of those children reciting the Quran and speaking in the Arabic, right?
That was one of those children.
Right. Alhamdulillah, right? But that was the thing. That was the thing that people saw. People aspired to that. And even today, let's be honest, we really don't have that type of a thing amongst us, right?
Say it again.
Where we have,
now we're talking historic facts,
right? Where we have and I like what the brothers, alhamdulillah, I like what the brothers are doing in Memphis and everything, alhamdulillah. But we really don't have where we have like a boarding school type situation where you have African-American children within the states, right, that are learning Quran to that number of students, right? And then also learning the Arabic language to speak the language. right? So that's important, right?
So no, here's the thing about that. And when I say that, that makes it important is there is a benefit. Let me show you what you're talking about. You see him with the kids?
Yeah.
That's what you're talking about, right?
Right.
That connection that he saw in black children. So even, and you know how we always talk about don't throw out the baby with the bathwater?
That's not me. I don't say that.
You don't say throw out the baby with the bathwater?
I don't say don't throw out the baby. I don't use that because I think I say that we have better examples that we can use.
Where?
That's what I don't, because I think that when we say that terminology, I think what it does is it allows for like, for example, let me give you an example. Musaylima, right? During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he was a liar, right? But he also had wealth. He also had a way with the people. For him to even get into a position where he could even vie for a potential to even come to the Prophet ﷺ, being like, let's say this, come to me, let's have an agreement. He had already had to have some ability to reach the people, right? We don't give him credit. We don't say, hey, well, he did do some good stuff, despite the fact this other stuff, this Kufa stuff that he's been saying.
You opened up a can of worms.
Yeah.
Be careful.
I already know.
When you start opening up cans of worms, you know where I'm going.
Right. So my position is let's use the better examples. That's all I say.
Okay, now let me ask you something. You just made it, right? Wow. Hey, you know we gotta put some spice in this.
Oh, right? For sure.
Wow, you admitted something that we have not seen the likes in Black American history. The work with children and the Quran and the Arabic language like was done in that community. Hands down.
That's a fact.
Would you agree?
That's a fact. I mean, it's not about an agreement. It's a fact. Right?
Okay, that's a fact.
I know, but now don't get me wrong. I know of children who have matriculated, who've become a Hafiz of Quran and studied here in America and done so, right? I know that those instances exist. But I'm saying to the degree.
Right.
You know what
not
I'm saying?
Even close. Not it's even 10%.
No, it's not close.
Right? So when I'm saying that example in our history shows us what we can do as Black people.
Right.
Right. So when you look at something and we just push it out, this was people learning the Quran, people learning the Arabic language. These are our children, the potential they had. These children, they came in America and they didn't speak English. We did that as Black folk. Our children were giving the speech, Juma, a speech in Arabic language without papers. Fact. In Arabic.
No, I agree.
So what I mean, and despite all the other stuff, that portion is helpful for us to know what can we do. That's my only point.
Right.
Because if you look at us now, you would think that it ain't much we can do.
No, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying, Imam. In terms of saying, hey, listen, if we stop taking certain people off the table, right? If we stop taking certain people and then look at all the examples, right? All of the collective examples, and then we can take portions of the good stuff, you know what I'm saying? But my thing
with our knowledge,
right,
of what is right. See, because here's the point. As we discussing, and here's the hardest part for you as a historian. It's very difficult. I understand that. Right. So, you know, I lighten up, throw a punch, and lighten up, throw a shot, because I understand what you got to face. But at the same time, as a historian, you got to think of where we at now and where we're going.
Right.
Right. And the facts are the facts.
No doubt.
Because you tell a fact doesn't mean you support everything, right? So when I look at
that's my, it's a constant struggle. You
struggle,
know what I'm saying?
right?
What we
Because
have.
here's my point.
Mhm.
When and I told you we'll leave that for later because we don't want to get caught up in these things. But because when we just isolate a whole thing from history, that's injustice to history, especially our own history. Like to talk about the development of Islam in America and never talk about the Nation of Islam is an injustice. That's impossible because we wouldn't have a great portion of Sunni Muslims under the followers of the Imam Warif Muhammad had they not came through that movement, right? That was a step.
Right.
And why the Arabs, they tell their history, and their history was idol worship. When we study the Sirah, what do we learn before we even get to the Revelation? What does we study most of the time in the Sirah? Before we get to Revelation.
Before their history.
We study about the pre-Arab, the pre-Islamic Arabs, their cultures, their wars, their tribes, their relationships, who was who. And these are idol worshippers.
Right. But I think that goes back to another thing, which is another tangent, is the Arab chauvinism that we often deal with in Islamic discourse, right?
So my point is, why when we tell the Black story, we have to forget our history? Why can they tell their history and we can't tell ours? That's something to think about.
Okay, so I'll tell you from me, right? As a researcher from my vantage point, right? So brass tacks, when we talk about what was established with the Ansars, right, and so forth, we also have to be honest that could be something that's very triggering, right? That could be very triggering because of the people who were harmed by that movement, right? Him, right? So
but
people,
don't everyone got that when you talk about the Dar? There are people right now that listen, when you mention the Dar, they're triggered. They go into an emotional state.
It's
because some of their family members lost their lives. So you got to be fair. That's all I'm saying.
Right. But
people are going to be triggered by history. History has its dark pages.
Yes, no doubt.
But we don't conceal history because people may be affected, or we selectively pick who can be affected and who cannot, right? The Jews made a lifestyle out of the pain they suffered in history, and they never let it be forgotten. But when it comes to our Holocaust, no one wants to talk about it. That was in the past. I'm giving you the same analogy.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying. I'm listening.
We are not allowed to forget the Jewish Holocaust, but the Holocaust of hundreds of thousands and affected millions of people and civilization as we know it, that's okay to forget. That was in the past, and it doesn't matter.
But even he himself attacked those very same things that he was doing at those times. You see what I'm saying?
Again?
Pardon me? He himself, right, became one of the most vociferous attackers of Orthodox Sunni Islam in his writings himself.
But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. All I'm talking about is the history part of it.
Okay.
We're not talking right, wrong, because if we talk right and wrong.
No, I'm talking about right and wrong. I'm talking about historically, right?
That's all we're talking about, history. So that can be documented. But I can talk right now. How many people, let's just give you an example. I just want us to be fair when we talk about history. That's all. Right. Because we need the whole record, right? Absolutely. The whole record as it is. If we talk about the Salafi movement today, let's just give the point, right? Most of the people who are now representing this new version of the Salafi madhab were the strongest attackers of every other Muslim. And now today, they're apologists. We're not on that. If that's Salafi, I'm not it. You're hearing this a lot, right or wrong?
Right.
But you were the same person who wreaked havoc in our communities, marriages, families, broken families, serial divorces, sexual molestation, all that stuff. If we talk about it, was there.
Mm-hmm.
But you give them a pass. Not saying you. We give them a pass, and they can remain. But the others we criticize, and we want to wipe them out of history.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, when we're being historically accurate, we're not talking about right and wrong. We're not talking about who we agree with, who we disagree with. I just want to know history. And when it comes to history, I don't think it's fair to people who's trying to learn history to take out. That's what the white man did to us. Start taking portions because it don't fit his narrative. Let's not be like that. That's all I'm talking about.
I agree, right? But we cannot allow Dr. York's marketing to then dictate how we view history, right? We can't say that, hey, he and his ideology, right, came from or was incubated at the State Street Masjid. That's just not.
I don't think nobody's saying that.
No one said that.
I understand, but I'm just saying I want to make it clear, like in our discourse, that's where the position where I'm at, because it's not there. Even the positive things that he was doing, right? Even the positive things he was doing, there's no, maybe, yes. It's like this. I'm gonna tell you. You ever see where a person says, hey, and I've had this situation, right? In real life, right? Brass tacks, we're talking brass tacks. Person tell you, hey, Sheikh, so-and-so told me to do X, Y, and Z. Sheikh told me to do this. Why are you doing that? Sheikh told me to do it, right? But when you peel back that layer, what really happened is you had this idea yourself and you went to the Sheikh and you asked him, Sheikh, do you think this is a good idea? Will you put your blessing on it? Oh, is it about pushing Islam? Alhamdulillah, Bismillah. But that's not what you tell the people. You don't tell the people that you went to them and you wanted him to give his blessing on something that on the face is good, which of course the Sheikh is going to say, Alhamdulillah, go ahead. But then when you relay it back to the people, it's like, yeah, see, the Sheikh told me to do this or that. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That's not the same.
But that's in every movement.
And that's a good example you gave, because there's a whole lot of that going on.
What'd you say?
That's in every movement, even today.
Right.
There's a whole lot of that going on.
You can't be complicit in that. That's
all right. Let me ask you something. Since we going there, I'm going to.
Of course.
I'm going to turn it up. I'm going to ask you, you're a historian. How many hundreds and thousands of people were killed by Muhammad ibn Saud and Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's armies? Muslims.
Thousands.
Right.
And Taifa, there was, I don't know how many. It was a massacre. Right. We know this.
And how come today those same people in our communities spreading those ideas with no challenging?
I'm not saying that there were. I'm going to tell you this. I'm not going to say that.
Are their crimes worse than the crimes of Dr. York? Give me the thousands of people he killed.
I'm going to say this. Allah says in Quran that oppression is worse than slaughter.
Huh?
Allah says in Quran that oppression is worse than slaughter.
Oh.
If you oppress a person, that's worse than you killing them.
Killing them and taking their religious practice and subjugating them, not allowing them practice. To this day, you can't even go to the grave of the Prophet ﷺ and say, As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya Rasulullah, without their oppression. What are you talking about?
That's oppression.
So they killed and did oppression and still doing oppression and took the wealth of the Muslims' land and won't spread it with no one else unless they accept their doctrine. But today we see them spread around all over and we remain completely silent. But when it comes to us, we're all arms to gun us down.
No, I don't think nobody's remained silent. I will say this.
What do you mean remain silent? That doctrine is being pushed even in Daou Islam, and we know it. See, you bringing it out.
But what I'll say this is that there is a difference between, right, someone taking information, right, that was what they thought was neutral, right, because they didn't know enough to know that it had a ideological slant to it, then someone picking up the mantle and the banner of what that movement did. The Darul
No one
Islam
did that. If
Hold on,
you
hold
look
on.
at
they
every
remain
person,
independent, huh? They
if you
Can
look
we
remain.
go
at every
back for a minute?
person,
I think we're going off on a tangent.
I know, but this is important because I want historical record to. We're only going off on a tangent because when this is important now, because when we deal with history, you can't do the same thing on another page.
No, absolutely.
You follow my point?
I
If we're going
follow
to talk
you.
about historically being correct, we're going to have to say, no, if we're fair here, we can't be unfair here. If we're going to be critical here, we got to be critical here. That's just
No,
across the board. That's all I want to establish. That's it.
and that's the thing, and the baseline that I said, like I said, if it's something, right, that if it's something that's central to it, like for example, I talked about um Professor Ezudine being part of the Moorish science, but I did not go into all of the fitness specifically as to what happened, transpired in both Chicago, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit. It was way more to it than what I actually stated, right? It was a lot more, right? You know this. But I'm saying, hey, to keep it, you know what I'm saying? Because many of the people, right, that's affiliated with those groups even today, they don't even know the full depth of what was happening as as a result of that fissure or that split. It
But
was a
see,
lot.
that's what remember I was telling you, we was talking about that right now, and we can get back to it. I just want to keep us focused on this because what I see a lot of time, right? You look at the bad that came out of that stuff, right?
Right.
But do you look at the good? Imam Amin, you have got his start in that.
Right.
What you see, I never was a Salafi. I never was any of that. I came from the Ansars to Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, right? So everything's not bad, right?
Right.
Everything's not bad. And the abilities that we have today, I got there. How do you just dismiss that? That's part of Black history. That's all I'm saying, right? Now, you can tell all them horror stories, but you also got good stories.
But, okay, but here's what I'm saying, right? So, for example,
so what you're
posted
doing,
a picture.
not saying you, what can happen is to erase the history of some some of our Islamic backgrounds get wiped out. Our path is important so that we can understand where we're at today. That's all my point is. And I'll stop there. I hope we understand my point.
No,
because this is going to come up again.
Huh?
Because this is going to come up in a different form. And history is bitter. So when it comes up in a different form, I want to come back to the same thing.
Right.
Because a lot of us, tell the truth, we like to act like history ain't history, right or wrong?
Facts.
Okay, facts. That's all I want to say. When it comes to history,
at the end of the day,
we get
right?
amnesia. And listen,
right?
If we understood history, wouldn't we see Al-Qaeda and ISIS very clear if we understood history?
No doubt.
But the reason why people think Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Boko Haram is new because people hid history, right or wrong?
Facts.
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 So we're living as a result of the neglect and the hiding of history. We're living the pain of it right now, all of us.
But here's the thing, though, right? One of the things, even if you look back, if you look at most of the heretical groups that came out of early Islam, the early movements, we knew because the scholars wrote about them. Their writings and all that stuff don't really exist because them as groups kind of went away. We know from,
what do you mean?
like, for example, I'm trying to think of a group that without creating more drama.
Imam Naeem, he's getting a first-hand Black Imams Roundtable.
Man, y'all trying to get me
Adil
in trouble.
on YouTube said,
Huh?
he said the historian is getting his dose of Black Imam Roundtable today.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. No doubt.
It's
Hey,
all love,
I know
bro.
it was coming.
It's all love.
No, I know. No, but listen.
Because you know what?
It's in this
You're
space.
very important to our future. You are extremely important. And your importance cannot be subjugated by someone else's sensitivities.
Okay, so here's the thing, right?
Did you hear that?
I totally get that, right? Which that doesn't stop. So I'll put it like this, right? I go where the research is, right? So however it goes, I'll research it, right? But I will, and I'm always honest about this. See, that's the difference. Some people will say, oh, well, that didn't happen, or this didn't happen, right? There's a difference when you're honest about the prism in which you are telling the narrative. You see what I'm saying? Everyone's going to tell the narrative from a prism. The problem I have is when you get to some of certain spaces, they make it sound as if they're totally objective when they're not.
That's my point.
That's the problem.
That's
right?
my point.
But I make it clear the prism that I'm coming from, right? And so when I'm saying that, it's like, okay, here's what he's talking about. This is going to be his discourse. This not to say that nothing else existed or that this thing existed in a vacuum, right? Because you have people that move in between, right? For example, there's one brother who wrote articles that was in the Muslim Student Association Journal, as well as the Daou. This brother went and, he became a Jehovah's Witness or something, right? Now, what I look like saying, okay, we're going to talk about this brother here. You know what I'm saying? No, mashallah, may Allah guide the brother or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if he died upon that. I don't know, right? But he changed, right? Now, did he add some contribution? Because somebody read some of the stuff he wrote. And I'm sure some Muslim benefited from that, right? But I'm not going to take all of the discussion of our history. You know as well as I do, there are many brothers who accepted Islam in the 90s. It was thousands of young Black men who accepted Islam, particularly from 90 to 93. It was thousands of brothers, right? How many of those brothers still practice today?
I think most of them are still Muslim, man. You mean practice?
Right? Huh?
I think most of them, you mean practice or still Muslim?
Both.
I mean,
man, I think we getting off track.
Okay, let's go back to his.
Put it back on track, ma'am.
Okay,
because I'm for the discussion.
I
we
think
got a lot of discussion. Don't worry about that. Let's get back on track.
Most of we want to learn as much as we can about the Daou Islam movement. Okay. I just wanted you just to name drop some other figures or movements or groups that may have had some connection with State Street before you went.
We got that. You got that out. Let's go back to State Street. We brought back what you might have possibly left out. We said it. It's done. Move on.
Okay.
Was there anyone else from State Street that branched out and did something else other than the Daou before we get to the Daou?
Not that I know of. That was rooted in the State Street. No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah. So Now, there's the people who knew Sheikh Daoud. A lot of Muslims knew Sheikh Daoud because his place was like the stopping spot. Even many of the Arabs, you know what I'm saying? Eventually, that's who eventually took over that masjid. I mean, I don't want to say like took over, but they are the ones who are primarily attending that masjid today, right?
They took over. However, they took it over. You know, I used to work around the block from State Street Masjid. I used to be the janitor for a daycare center that's on the corner of Atlantic Avenue and Court Street.
Man,
And I used to go
What's
there
that?
to make salat.
It.
There's
It's
no
nice.
black people there now. Battles are won by swords.
Nice. That was a very nice statement.
Wars are won by the pen of the historians.
Wow, that's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta say that's kind of tight there.
Yeah, that's no doubt.
So do you know how the State Street Masjid eventually fell into the hands of the Arabs? I think most of them are for Yemen, right?
Right. No, I don't know. I do know that there were a strong contingent of merchant seamen, right, from the Yemeni background that frequented the State Street Masjid, right? Once all the younger, African Americans kind of started with the Dar al-Islam movement, then I think that's where that came from. But it wasn't like the people boycotted the State Street or nothing like that, or were run away. I don't want that. That's the point I was just trying to make really clear.
Right.
It was a contentious type of situation. It was just, hey, this is where the movement is. This is where the action is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You have a lot of people that were wanting to see something happen. I think even now, I think you have a lot of African American Muslims, or not yet Muslims, as one of my imams like to say, not yet Muslims, looking at what's going on, right? So that's why you may see people, and I'm going to say this, right? We're going to have a little discussion. The people who say, hey, why are you guys focusing so much on creed when look what's going on in our inner cities, and the people need the Muslims to step up and do something on a grassroots level. Now, I know that both of you are working, alhamdulillah, right? But when the people see it, right, they're seeing and saying, okay, I get the discourse. They don't understand it to the nature of why this has to happen, right? But then they're saying, okay, what's going to happen? What we're going to do? Whereas with the Dar al-Islam, those brothers and sisters, they started working. They were young and they were energetic and they were working and they were doing something. So no, they didn't have the systematic knowledge, right? But they were working, putting together things, building. They didn't even, they were making their own clothes. You know what I'm saying? All of this in an effort to create this Dar al-Islam, this abode of Islam place where people can come pray. Wasn't masjids wasn't open 5 times a day, all day for salat. That wasn't happening prior to the Dar al-Islam movement. And people can say what they want to say, but that was not a reality in America.
What happened with the State Street Masjid is also a lesson that Imam Amin touches on. He touched on it this morning. Like a lot of our masjids that we form and establish either cease to exist by means of neglect or mismanagement or abuse and end up closing down, or we neglect it and basically turn our backs on it and they fall into someone else's hands. And I know several masjids in New York that don't even exist no more. They were there. I prayed in those masjids in New York. They don't exist no more in New York, right? And other places.
But I think that's a function of our inability to sustain cohesiveness, to see ourselves as a people, right? That's part of the issue, right?
That part right there.
So when you don't have that, right? Like all of these other groups, right? I know we're off on another tangent, man. But I got to say this, right? This is important. If you look at Detroit, Metro Detroit, most of those masajids that have different names now, I don't want to call any masjids out, but they started off with naming conventions of their various ethnic groups. The name of the masjid came later, right? So it may be such and such communities. I mean, it's Islamic Center, or this nation Islamic Center, or community center. You know what I'm saying? And then it became masjid such and such, or mosque or such and such. But that wasn't the first, because they understand one thing: you can't have generational Islam if you don't have generational Muslim. Let me be
Can I
clear.
ask you a question?
Yeah.
Those masajid that you're talking about, are they immigrant or are you talking about black folk?
Immigrant. Absolutely.
Immigrant.
Absolutely.
Huh? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just didn't know what you was talking about.
Pardon me?
No, I just didn't know if you were talking
No,
about
immigrant. I'm
immigrants.
saying
It
there
sounded
were
like that's what you were saying.
masajids, right?
Mhm.
That got their root in immigrant cultural centers,
Right.
that then facilitated the masjid being established. You know what I'm saying? We have looked at the movements only as movements. But guess what happens with movements? They ebb and flow. The different generations look at stuff differently, right? But when you have something that's embedded in your culture and you have a framework, right, you don't have to worry about that. The problem that some of them are going through right now is the youth, the third and fourth generation immigrants, are moving away from the paradigm altogether, right? And so that's what they're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? We're dealing with, hey, we're not even coming together from the get-go. So you can't, until you address, one, we are people and we need to work together, until you address that point, and then address the systematic development of Islam, or have some structured system of knowledge that you're going to get through, you're not going to be able to create a stable generational community. It's not going to happen. Because we're given to trends here in America. One day something might look cool, and then the next generation like, nah, that ain't happening. You know what I'm saying? But in order to sustain something generationally, it's got to be that aspect of it. It's got to be something that's acceptable over generations.
Let me ask you a question, because I've been playing with numbers in my mind about black folk and our movements and our leadership. How long did the Daou last before it eventually broke into factions?
I don't want to say factions, but there was some separation, right? I would say a good.
That's what factions mean.
No. Factions meaning like, hey, we're contention, we're doing this, versus, hey, we're good, we're brothers, we just gonna do something different. That's it.
No, but the Daou ended up in factions.
No, right.
Not we brothers, we ain't enemies and we ain't doing the same thing.
Right. No, I'm saying,
Come
but
on,
so it was ways, right?
That's what I'm saying. Right. How long did it last? Listen, this is something we should learn.
I would say it was a good. Before the first, like I would say, fall back, probably about a good 7 years.
But what year did it start?
But
I don't think we mentioned that.
Happened was, I say it was a good 7 to 8 years before but the major thing that happened was in 80s. And if you take it from 67 from the beginning to what was that, 82, right? So that would be that duration.
So you're talking roughly 15 years.
Yep.
So the Daou started in 1967.
Yeah. For the most part, with them coming together and saying, hey, we want a leader.
and as an
Oh, you need
established
to tell us
movement,
about that because most of the people watching don't know that history.
Okay,
from as an established, we're rolling. What year is that taking place?
that's what I'm saying. That was 67. They first started meeting, like I said, in 62, coming out of State Street, right? But they were moving around, right? It was not like a set, hey, we're here. Then
that's first place in New York you're talking about, right?
Right, this is in New York. Now, what
when
made
when they become adding communities, that doesn't happen to like the late 60s and early 70s, right?
Right, late 69. That's right. When you had.
So you're talking about a basic and 13-year period, right?
Pardon me?
So really, you're talking about a real 13-year period.
Right.
I want to show you something.
Once it moves out of New York. That's why I was trying to, saying the numbers.
Right. So you're talking about when it becomes a national type of movement.
Right.
You're talking about it lasts for about 13 years.
Right.
I want to share something to you. Do you know the main work of Malcolm X only lasts 13 years?
Yes.
Do you know the main work of Martin Luther King Jr. only lasts 13 years?
I didn't know that for sure.
Yeah.
But I knew about
1968.
Yep.
I mean, that's just something to think about.
No doubt.
Longevity in our movements. And all of our movements had some kind of outside hand in destroying it.
But that's the point I was getting to earlier.
Yeah, to what you're saying. It verifies what you're saying.
We can't just say this stuff happens in a vacuum.
Right.
Right. So let me give you another example. Right. While the Nation of Islam operated, once they stopped talking about draft and any of that stuff from the 40s, once they stopped that, going forward, they were not fettered with in terms of taxes and none of that stuff as a movement, right? When Imam Wardine, the first year he took over, they didn't bother him, right? Once he moved the people to Orthodox Islam, that's when the government started saying and encroaching on the nation. You know what I'm saying? Saying you can't do this with taxes, you have to do this with taxes, right? You're so much in debt here and all of this. Before, none of that was an issue. None of that. You won't see any of that in any issue. And then the Salafis, right? You don't hear them say anything about, and I'm talking about during the 70s, you don't hear them writing anything against, and the Salafis or of that ilk have been in America for a long time. And Abu Muslim, he would tell you that, Imam Abu Muslim, he would tell you that. They were here, right? Those guys. But even with that, when does the Salafi movement start talking about Imam Wardine? It wasn't until Bin Baz offered Imam Wardine money, he turned it down because he was not going to be like their little henchman. You know what I'm saying? Well, they could say, well, you like this person, you don't like this person, we don't like him, so you don't like him. So since he wouldn't fall into that category for them, right, then they unleashed the hounds on him. You won't find any of them talking about him, Imam Wardine Rahimullah, prior to the time when Imam Wardine gave the money or didn't accept the money from Bin Baz's charity organization. I forgot the name of it. But until before that, there was nothing attacking him.
You know,
he could go to
our brothers and sisters in Philadelphia will learn history if they would take what you just said and apply it now. Stop taking money from them. They will take control of their masjid. That's a shot.
But,
No,
but
but
don't do that. But because I want to be clear, right, about the outside influences, right? Those attacks, written attacks, and all that from the so-called, their sheikhs over there didn't happen prior to that.
Mhm.
But if you go back, you will realize that hand, especially the Saudi hand, has always been trying to undermine the affairs of Black American Muslims.
No doubt.
If you go back to 73 and 74, when they invited Black imams from all around the country
No
to
doubt.
Saudi Arabia with the intent, as Imam Mutawif told us, to make Elijah Muhammad the national leader of Black Muslims.
Right.
So that has always been a goal of theirs, to have their affairs. And then when you study their history, you get to understand from our people who has influence in that, how that stuff's coming full circle.
But again,
and it has successfully nullified the Black Islamic movement in the country.
But that what if you listen to some of our revolutionary elders, right, when they talk, they'll break it all down for you, right? It's a political move, and that's another thing we do in Islam that to our detriment. We naively think that a sheikh sitting in some country overseas is going to teach us some totally political neutral Islam that is not impacted by the state or country which he lives. It's not going to happen because he has to teach something that's not going to get him put in jail in his country. You see what I'm saying? And so we fall for that, not understanding that we have a myopic view of the Islam that we're learning. We need to take a step back and broaden our approach, right? One of the things, like, many people listen to El Hajj Malik, Rahimullah, and they hear Malcolm X talking, and Malcolm X said this, but they're not really listening, right? So if you listen to what he said about the March on Washington, right?
Message to the grassroots.
Right? We talking about the March on Washington. What was that for? It was for to basically come up there fiery and to shut it down, right? What did they do? What did the government do? They encapsulated, right? Took it and neutered it till it was nothing more than a trip, right? That's what they do to everything. This is their country. Of course they're going to try to do it. Like Imam Mutawif said, when you get something you establish, you're not going to allow nothing that's in your power to come in and change your status quo. This is a reality. And we can't be naive and keep on thinking that it's not a reality, right? So again, when our movements have momentum and stuff like that, of course, they're going to see how they can impede that. What I don't like is when people say, oh, well, these people didn't do anything. Or like El Hajj Malik, he only lived a year. He didn't do anything in a year. How can you do anything in a year? He lived less than a year, right? As if, El Hajj said, hey, I'm only going to work this 11 months and then I'm going to stop. No, it was something that happened. It was a mechanism that happened against him. So we have to be honest in the assessment, right? True, he didn't develop a sustainable nothing, really. All those things he developed, it was somehow and something happened, but he created the idea. He was his idea and his spark, right? He sparked more people to do something. And that's the way we got to look at it. We got to keep on looking like, hey, somebody else come along and set that spark. Because the enemy understands that, hey, if I can encapsulate whatever they're doing, misdirect, redirect, or just keep it offline, right? So, hey, if I can keep them talking about only creed and we got children in the streets that need guidance, you know what I'm saying? You got all these young men in city after city, Detroit, Atlanta, all over, right? They're gravitating to rappers who just say Allah or Alhamdulillah, right? Because they can sense something in that, but they also see something that they are attracted to moving forward. When I say we, I'm saying the brothers that kind of have an understanding of what's going on, we also have to be flexible so that when we work with other people, the goal and objective is, hey, I may not agree with you on everything, but at least we can agree that we got to do something for our youth. And that doesn't mean just our youth that are Muslim. That means our youth across the board. And I know, Sheikh, I know you're doing stuff in Atlantic City. I know Imam is doing stuff in Pittsburgh, right? But in these discussions, in this discourse that we're having, right, we also got to mention that part. Because
Right.
if we don't, we're going to lose them because they're going to say, man, I don't see what you're talking about.
You know what I'm scared of?
What?
You know, in my optic, narrow vision right now at 9:34 p.m., I'm afraid that, people, we're going to leave this broadcast and people still not know what the Dar Islam movement was.
All right, we'll go back to it. I'm with it. Hey, listen. Hey, listen.
We keep talking about all the peripheral issues, and there are a lot of people here that still don't know what the Dar Islam movement was, when it started, who its leader was, what it looked like, how it broke up, and all that stuff. But we talk about everything around it, though.
But here's what I think, though, that everybody should keep in mind.
Right.
We're doing something that is not commonplace among us. We're talking to each other about all kinds of issues. So don't expect that we're going to solve, or we have so much to unpack, right? And it's not going to happen overnight. We already signed him up in a non-refundable contract that he's going to be the historian and researcher for our Black Imam Roundtable, Sheikh 3453 family. So that's a done deal. Did we agree with that? Or that wasn't agreed upon?
Mashallah, I think I was volunteered. You know how they be like, they say, you got any volunteers? And everybody else step back. I was the one to get the memo.
All right. So my point, right? So
yeah.
This is an ongoing process. It's a learning process. So you got to give us our ability to really dig in, because these are things we've been bottled up in us for years. So, inshallah, be patient. Because we ain't even discussed what all this history is going to lead us to do in the present.
Right. So
or in the future.
What Imam, what Imam Naim is talking about, alhamdulillah. But so my mindset was to come. I thought we were going to have a discussion, and I actually wanted to hear Abu Muslima talk about their movement, right? That's really, and I had some questions.
You don't want to hear that discussion.
Yeah, no,
I do, but I think all that stuff, these history facts are going to come out in pieces, because like you said, when you talk about the Ansars, that stuff is gone a long time ago. So even though it's still pain, that's new pain for some people, but old pain for others.
Right.
Do you understand my point?
Right.
So the same thing now, when you talk about the so-called Salafi Wahhabi community, that's a still present thing. Some people are still pushing those ideas. They're not of the past. It exists right now. So it's like when you talk about the Dar, you got to watch what you say because of the stuff that's still existing right now, right or
No,
wrong. So
but,
that's the
but
same
also
thing.
I want
It
to
ain't
be
all gonna come out.
fair. So also I want to be fair, right? Like what you was just saying, right? If you talk about a people, when we're going to talk about the history, right? My take on that, like I said, if Imam has said, "Hey, Akil, I want you to come on and specifically talk about the Dar," I would have had a different approach to it. But
Right.
as we were talking about history, I didn't want to just have it centered on the Dar. I wanted to talk about that era, right? So you also had the Islamic Party, right?
Which I know
So
nothing about. I need to hear that too.
right,
Excuse me.
so you know, Islamic Party, which was headed by Imam Muzaffar-Din, rahimahullah. You know, he was a man who traveled all
Was he
around the
black?
Muslim land. Huh?
Was he black?
Of course, he's black.
I don't know. I don't know anything
Wow.
about
Yeah.
him.
So the Islamic Party basically he went Sheikh Muzaffar-Din. He went and traveled. He visited Maududi in Pakistan, like visit him. You know what I'm saying? He went to Lebanon. You know what I'm saying? He went all around. But then when he came back, he understood that he needed to tap into the movement. You know, that time, the late 60s, early 70s was a very time of movement amongst our people. And he, tapped into that. Now, again, it's the same thing in terms of with the Dar. It's that they didn't have a stated structure of system of knowledge. See, this is what I keep trying to get us back to, right? When we look at this history, you'll see certain threads, right? Besides the fact of us being impeded, that's the word I'm gonna use. Besides us being impeded, besides that, what the things that we can control ourselves in terms of having systems of knowledge that we develop and can pass on to generations, that's the component that we're missing in a big way.
But you're not going to do that really until you have these Akida discussions.
Mm-hmm.
The thing you're running from is preventing you from doing what you're talking about. Do you realize that? The thing that we're running from is preventing us from doing what we want to do. Let's look at this as a relationship, a man and a woman, right?
Mm.
They got deep-seated relationship issues. And the man or the woman thinks that how we're going to solve all our issues is in the bedroom. Is that real?
Nah, absolutely not, right?
Even if the relationship in the bedroom is great, when they get out of the bedroom, they still got to deal with all those other issues they got going on.
Right there in the face.
So long as they think, let's ignore these issues, and every time these issues come up, let's go to the bedroom. Is that relationship going to be sustainable?
No.
So similarly, by way of analogy, we have the Akida issues. That's what we're dealing with. And then we go and we do community work, which is equivalent to the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then we leave off the issue that we're really fighting about. Even though we do community issues, we still got this thing going on, right? Instead of discussing it, figuring it out, and then actually understanding it well before we can even decide to agree to disagree. We must understand the issue, right? And when I say the Akida issue, because the Akida issue leads into other issues. It is a bunch of issues that based on that, why we have the things we have, right? So these things we can't ignore, right? If you look at the breakup of the Dar, wasn't that an Akida issue? Think about it. When you know Islam, wasn't that an Akida issue?
Honestly, I'm gonna say it was. I'm gonna say it was a system of knowledge issue. Here's why. Hold on. Here's why. I'm gonna tell you what. Here's my take on it. Right. My analysis. Right. This is my analysis. You had a group of movement people who were effectively accomplishing things. Right. Outside of New York, there were all these separate communities were being established. The problem which presented itself is that if we don't have an agreed upon consistency in terms of practice, right? One moment we're following Hanafi madhab on one issue, then on another issue we're following another sheikh, and then somebody else pick up another book and they get a different type of interpretation and they go on that, right? What Sheikh Jelani, this is just a reality. What he offered them was, hey, one stated system of knowledge on fiqh, one stated knowledge on tariqah, right? The understand
one stated knowledge on creed.
Yes.
Don't forget that. Because
yes,
whether we like the movement, no, you're missing my point. Whether you like the movement, that whole structure was a structure, and it was a traditional structure.
No doubt.
And the Dar took another route. I said, when you understand, remember, let's take this as a rule, and this is going to be a hurtful rule. We as a people have always been lacking as a whole in Islamic knowledge. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Always. It's still today like that.
Right.
A lot of us can't even recognize when we have differences in creed. We think it's all the same, and it's not. And the creed is the foundation, and other issues are built upon it, right? So if you heard those early discussions in the inner circles, you obviously see, because they went in two different directions in terms of creed and practice. Am I right or wrong? Was the Fuqara community reading books of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab?
Absolutely not. You know they wasn't.
Okay, so was the Dar reading books of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab?
Yes.
So aren't those books specifically designed and creed and how you view Muslims and practice?
No doubt.
That's the root.
But here's the thing.
Understand.
But here's the thing. The difference.
That's the root.
The difference is, and here's where I would say the difference is that with the Dar and even with the, I would say the remnants of the Dar, right? It was a strong emphasis on being independent, right?
But in reality, you cannot be independent when someone else controls your creed and your mind and your thinking through their writings. You're not independent. You are subjugated to the mind of someone who is going to use their doctrine, their politics to subjugate you, even from a distance. What you see in that breakup is you see a foreign hand taking control of our communities. That's what you find out. And each of them with distinct creeds doing what they do, and we all suffering as a people. We're talking from it, we're looking hindsight. The one who's in it doesn't see all that. We're looking hindsight. Historically, we're looking back. We're examining all the facts, and we say, oh, this would happen. Do you see my point?
No, absolutely.
This is, you know, they say hindsight is 20/20. When you in it, you don't see all this stuff.
No, absolutely not.
If you follow what I'm saying, do you understand my point?
No, I get what you said, because you're saying, wait, okay, now let's make an analysis of it, right? But that can be said with many situations with our people, right? If you take one type of ideology and you manipulate it, right? You can pit people against each other and they get a laser view just on the issue, not taking a step back and looking at it from a wider perspective.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So when you told me, like when you said, hey, Abu Muslim is going to be on tonight, I was like, yes, right? Because I know your position on things, right? And I know the things that I've heard on tapes and stuff like that in decades past. I don't know if he still talk like that now, but I'm saying decades past, or, you know what I'm saying, what I heard then, right? Or the pal talks and stuff. I don't even think they even have pal talk anymore. But the pal talks and stuff, right? But the reality is, at a certain point, those that's in it in that time. So I'm saying us in this time period now, right? We have to say within this time period, whoa, I'm looking hindsight 2020 at the past ones. How can we avoid those same mishaps, and how can we work together despite us seeing what's being maneuvered and what's going on? Because that's part of it too, right? We can't keep walking down the same trail and say, you know, throw our hands up and say that's the way it's going to be. We have to make conscious choices to say, hey, how can we do this? Imam Naeem,
hey, no. I'm sorry,
we're going to have a discussion about just the Daou. We're going to have it just for the one day.
For a long time.
Huh?
Akil been holding this thing like he want to get it out. So he's getting his opportunity, Imam Naeem. You gotta be patient, man. Akil been holding this thing in. It's like ready to burst, you know. But go ahead, Imam Naeem. We gonna chill. Because we got some other stuff going on, man.
No, go ahead. I give up. I'm just listening. I got my water. I'm chilling.
No, I mean, but here's my point. They got another battle going on in the thing. They're going at it over there. But
Imam Naeem, I know how you feel. Have you ever had one of those talks where a person gets up and say, I have a question, and then they have a football and you're trying to reel them in? I understand, Imam. But Imam, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing here. He got me. He got me on the hook.
Hey, no, all I'm saying though, right? Listen, I think if we're ever going to get somewhere, this is what I personally believe.
Mm-hmm.
They going off in the chat room. They done left us. Now they're talking about who was Wahhabi and who was not. Some sensitivities got pressed and they on their own mission. They done checked out. I'm sorry. My neighbor gonna get me. Hey, no, but listen.
Mm-hmm.
But our people are wild. No, here's what I'm saying, right, Imam Naeem? Check it out. We're gonna come back. We're gonna hit this. We're gonna get this Daou thing together. This ain't the last discussion.
Imam Naeem, like he's done.
But you gotta remember, Akil is in a historian dilemma here. He wants to tell the truth, but he also got some people to answer to. So it's rough. You gotta be, everybody gotta work within their context. So
but
go ahead.
Here's the thing though, right? So my position is this. Like I said, we have to tell the truth, right? And I posted this earlier, right? Because I already had like an idea how this could go, right? And I understand that sometimes you have to say certain things that everybody may not be cool with, right? I understand that. But what I don't want to have happen is that we focus on things that are divisive Not that we exclude realities, but that we focus on things that were divisive and we don't move the effort forward, right? Because the whole thing of it is that my thrust and goal is to say, hey, listen, we've done many things in Islam here in America, right? What was our strengths? What was our weaknesses? What can we do better, taking it to the next level, right? So, like Imam Amin said, yeah, we have to know what has been done prior, right? I've had discussions with brothers about establishing um like dormitories for students here in America. But guess what? That takes skill. I mean, you have to have the knowledgeable teachers. You have to have financial backing. You have to have a place. It has to have stability. It has to have structure, right? You just can't just say, okay, here we're gonna get this apartment, then we go over there. You know what I'm saying? How do we get to that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What did Dr. Imam Isa do at the time of the Ansars to have it where he had all of these children speaking Arabic and learning Quran? What happened? How did he get it that way? What was some of the strategy he used to have that be happening in Brooklyn, Flatbush in the 80s? You see what I'm saying? I get that, right? But then it's like, okay, it's a dilemma. You know what I'm saying? It's a dilemma. I'll give you an analogy of the dilemma, right? It's just like the Germans, when the Germans did all of that, and I know I'm losing some people when I say this, but it's a reality. The Germans did a lot of medical advances when they were abusing and doing the Holocaust against the Jews. In the medical field, there was a big discussion as to whether they should use some of that information that was gained to push forth medical advances. How do you juxtapose that, right? Look at what happened to us as a people. What Black people endured for the sake of medicine here in America. You know, I'm talking about real stuff, right?
Say that again. I'm sorry. The chat room is going off, and it caught my attention. I'm sorry.
See, my issue is this. I think sometimes we forget that, like us three, we know the general history of these movements and stuff. But there are a lot of people tuned in who don't know anything. Some may not even heard the name. So we're sitting around extracting lessons from a history that we haven't even told yet. Like we didn't get any information like we got about Professor Ezudine, and then we extract lessons from it. We're talking about the Dar, the Ansar Allah, and all that, and we haven't told the story of the Dar, the Ansar Allah. We extracted lessons from it.
No, it started because the historian started leaving out history, and he was protecting his sensitivities, stepped on my sensitivities, and I jumped in. Right then in the chat room, somebody was talking about somebody else's sensitivities, left them out, then they jumped in. Now everybody is all sensitive, and we can't even learn history. So we have to make an agreement. Everybody got to put their sensitivities to the side, and let's get the true historic narrative. Akil Fahd, you are the historian.
Well, Akil Fahd said he wasn't ready to talk about the Dar today. He was going to kick it.
He wanted to talk about it. He was talking about his sensitivities.
You know the amazing thing about it? A lot of people that got history in the Dar, they're kind of upset that people are writing them out of history. And they're making the Nation of Islam like the overarching, all-encompassing history of Islam in America. And we have an opportunity to put the Dar history on the table.
And we have the opportunity to put the Ansar history on the table. Why we got to write that out?
No doubt.
You put the nation, you put Moorish Science Temple, all that was in there, get to the Ansars and leave them out.
I did not do that.
Unfair, bad historian.
I did not do that. I specifically said that those groups that are heterodox, I'll let someone else discuss them. That's just not what I do.
Explain what you mean by heterodox.
Oh no, see, this is a
You gotta
setup.
be fair.
It's a setup.
You're not being fair. You're being totally biased. And that's wrong. Especially, I can see your own sensitivities. I get that. As a historian, that's not fair. You understand what I'm saying, Imam Naeem?
I understand.
So that's all I'm saying. If you're speaking from your own side, this is Akil Fad,
Right.
the lover of heterodoxy. Stop joking. Then that's fair.
To
Right.
put it simple, heterodox deviant.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Wait a minute. Because I have some deviants on my crew, I want to be silent about deviants only when it's on your crew. That's not a good historian, my brother. We got to be fair.
Right.
Because here's my point. At one point, you're criticizing deviants, and at another point, something you know is deviant, you accept it because too many of us still possess it. And that's wrong. Historically, that's wrong. Even if you feel that way, you have to say, listen, I'm a historian. I'm just telling the facts. Let the facts be, and you can sort that stuff out. I'm not going to navigate your sensitivities.
No,
and subject history to that. That's wrong.
But I don't write it out. I always say where the information came from, what books were being taught. I never hide or be vague about that. So I don't write it out.
But you said, what's that big old word? What's that big old word he used for deviance, Imam Naeem? I'm having me a Sister Samir moment. Super derogatory. What's that big word he used?
Man.
Heterodox.
So
Samir said heterosexual.
All right, it's getting late. We sleepy. Right, look.
Y'all see, no what? This what happened. Naeem, Imam, you spent it. And then it just unraveled.
Man, I just wanted you to name names. I didn't want you to go way off about Dr. York. I wanted to, because I know the Daou had its beginning, at least some of the members in State Street Masjid. I wanted you to springboard from there onto the Daou. But you just kept what you know.
No, Imam, no, look, once I said, hey, I'm not going to go into the Ansars because I know the history, right? Once in my mind, I didn't do that, then of course, Imam, Amin gonna be like, hey man, you gotta mention them too. You know what I'm saying? I get it. But if you say, hey, Akil, come over here and we're gonna talk about the Daou, boom, I can do that, no problem. If you say, hey, we want to talk about the Islamic Party, you know what I'm saying? Like there are other groups that were pivotal, that they were doing things and these brothers were working and they did a lot of movement in Islam, but they don't have the baggage that what ended up happening with the Ansar community.
Who don't have the baggage?
All of them. They don't. It's not the same. I mean,
listen, bro, it's worse. The Ansars, every sane individual who knows Islam know that was a deviant group and in the name of Islam. Anyone with a sound mind who learned a little bit of deen will discover that. Though hundreds of black people, there was a time, and Imam Naeem will tell you, in New York City, in all of the cities on the East Coast, we didn't talking about the Daou. We was talking about the Ansars. Am I right or wrong, Naeem?
Yeah.
I'm from the East Coast. If you go in all of the 80s, in the early 80s especially, all the way up to the late 80s, if you go in the inner cities of the East Coast, people knew Ansars. They ain't know nobody else. Trust me.
But that was due. And again, I say this about another organization that had great marketing. We can utilize great marketing without saying, hey, we're going to take a page out of this group's book, when the reality is
Okay.
just great
So
marketing.
what greater marketing do you have than those Wahhabi colorful books in every masjid around the country, every store, all of those clothes now doing the same exact thing that the Ansars did in our communities, just in a different form? What's the difference? Misguidance is misguidance.
Good point.
Why are we saying on this side, oh, because there's black people doing it is wrong, but if the Arab man do it, it's great? That's the underlying statement. When the blacks do it, let's come out and let's criticize them, rightfully so. But when the Arab is doing the same thing, or the Pakistani is doing the same thing, we're silent. What's the problem with that? That's my problem. We quick to judge us and beat us up when we're wrong, rightfully so. But when the others do the exact same thing, we justify it. Listen, all of those black Salafi leaders today, what is the biggest divide in the Salafi community? Tell me. In the Salafi community, what's the biggest divide?
I don't know. Honestly, I can't tell you.
Listen, all of our leaders read their books, right?
Right.
Let's be real. You know that. When you go to Jumu'ah, they are reading their books. They are teaching their books. You go to the masjid, you find the books of Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Al-Albani. Come on, let's keep it real. If we're talking.
Right.
That's our people.
No doubt.
Now, stop. Now, here's the point. We know the history of those ideas. We know that for a fact. But at the same time, when you talk about the Fuqara Jamaat, you talk about Sufis, deviant people. Is that the conversation? Am I right or wrong? Well, following the Sheikh. Not saying from you. I'm talking about our people. Let's keep it real.
Okay. All right.
When it comes to the Fuqara Jamaat, the way they talk about them is as if these people were some crazies. When they were bringing what was a traditional thing you're trying to talk about. Right? So here's all I'm saying is, when we're doing this stuff, we got to have some balance here. And even if the majority of people may be affected like we were affected in the past, we're trying to get to a better future. And then when we tell history, we got to tell it as it is.
Yeah.
Now you can debate the facts afterwards, but we cannot afford as a people to stop telling the truth.
No, I agree. I agree with you about telling the truth about the people, right? But for example, right? I know this is a whole different discourse, but I like it, right?
Oh, let me share something with you. But I didn't tell you. The majority of the problem in the Salafi community right now is there's a group of black people who no longer want to listen to their Saudi controllers. That's what's happening. So all these, and if you go back a few years ago, they was on a rampage. We don't got to listen to no Arabs. They don't care about nothing what you doing. While they sitting there eating their dates and tea, they ain't thinking about you. That's the whole, am I right or wrong, Imam Naeem? And now you have this big split between them is, we're not talking about we're doing our own thing and we don't got to them Saudis ain't running us. And then there's a group who's committed to the Saudis and then they're fighting. Same stuff. Same game on black people that was done 30 years ago. Right?
Right. So here's the thing, right?
Listen, you heard what I said. Same thing that was 30, 40, 50 years ago. The same exact thing happened to black people. Forget that it's the same game. And because we don't know history, we keep doing the same thing. That's my point.
So I get that, right? So we tell the history, right? But when we're telling this history, right, we have to be true. We have to be true. And I get what you're saying. But what I do, I haven't like been vague about anything. The difference is I don't highlight certain things to draw it out because I've already stated the fact. If someone else wants to do an analysis on that aspect of it, they're fine to do it, right? But I am not dodging the issue.
We would never
right?
accuse you of that.
No. No. I just want that to be clear because at the end of the day, I, as a researcher, right, I have to be honest to the historical fact, right?
That's all we want.
Right? But in terms of analysis of those facts, hey, somebody else can do that. I don't have to be obligated once I go beyond giving a certain statement of facts to then say, okay, here is the full analysis of this or that sort of thing. But I do have to be honest with the facts. That's the point.
That's all we ask, and nothing more, nothing less.
I have to be honest with the facts. So if you say, hey, where did this come from? Where did this Islam come from? What did they use? Factually, it was this, and this, right? But how they implemented it and how they utilized that tool is entirely different from the tool itself. This is just a fact.
Imam Fahim has a message for you.
You said what?
Imam Fahim has a message for
you. What did he say? I can't see that.
It's right there.
It's all tiny on my phone.
Hey, Imam Naim, could you read that for him?
Imam Fahim said, we would absolutely accuse you of ducking wreck.
When did I duck wreck?
All right, we got to close out.
I'm here.
Hey, Imam.
Listen, hold on. So before we depart, when I come back,
you're always welcome. You're our historian. We need you.
What is the discussion? No. So I want to have a framework. So then we all can be held accountable for this framework of the discussion.
Man, that's corny. We just shoot from the hip and put our issues out.
Man, I'm looking at Imam Naim, and he looking at me like, man, Akil, you done run amok. You've been led astray. I wanted you to be on the Daou issue, and you have not done that, brother. So I feel like I haven't accomplished the task that was set before me, but I didn't even know that was my task tonight.
All right, so this is your task for the next time we come on.
Right.
Your task is for you to explain the history of the Daou, because that's a part of history that Imam Naim and some others, they want to know in more detail. So that's your task, right? Would that be safe to say, Imam Naim? At least we're going to get another show.
Yes.
Because he got to come redeem himself. He looked like Farouk. You remember, did you see Martin when they had Tommy Hearns?
Oh, no. No. No, I ain't going out like that. No, but seriously though,
that was beautiful. I enjoyed
it. It's really important. You know what I'm saying? And Imam Naim, I'm gonna apologize, Imam Naim, because I got hooked in. I did. And but I must say, right, the part of having this discourse amongst our people is we have to be able to hold each other accountable. You know what I'm saying? So if you all think, you know what I'm saying, no fluff stuff, right? No fluff stuff. If you just feel like, hey, Akil, well, why you didn't do this or why you didn't do that, then I should be able to answer those questions just as a matter of fact, without sensitivity, but from fact. So I'm with you on that. You know what I'm saying? I'm with you. But when I'm talking about and I understand what you're saying about the works that have been written that we are a part of right now. Because I was saying I was not going to use that word tonight.
What word?
The W word.
What Wahhabi?
Yeah.
No, listen.
I'm trying.
I want to show you something.
You're right.
Right. This is a book that was giving me to research something. You see what that says?
Man, I couldn't even read the English. How am I read that?
It's called Al-Hawi min Fatawa Sheikh Al-Albani. Right?
Okay.
So this is fatwas from lessons from Al-Albani, right?
Right.
I want to show you something. This is on page 103. Right? You see that? He got a whole section on Al-Wahhabiyya and questions that were asked. Ma ra'yukum bil Wahhabiyya? What's your opinion about the Wahhabiyya? This question was asked to Al-Albani, and he addressed it. 4 pages just on that subject, right? It's history. You can't run from history. This is in his book. And he talked about it right there. I gave you the book. It's right there. And it's big. See that word? Al-Wahhabiyya. Why can he say it and we can't?
Okay.
He talked about it. Whether for or against, he talked about it. So why now all of a sudden, because someone's sensitivities going to bother them, we can't say the word? He said it. You ain't say Alabama while you using that word. You're not allowed to say that. Right? No, I'm being honest.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Listen, man, we got to stop letting people boss us around who don't give a damn about us.
No, for sure.
I repeat that. We got to stop letting people boss us around who don't give a damn about us.
But the thing of it is, Imam, is that when you're trying to get a consensus, right, you have to work at not being offensive. I'm a recovering jerk. I'm trying to be a person.
Hey, could you sign me up to the school you went to get rid of it? Because I'm still a jerk.
I am trying here, right? I'm trying to be a better person. So I'm constantly thinking in terms of, hey, put myself in another person's shoes, even when I don't agree, because it's easier to talk cool to somebody you agree with. It's much difficult to talk to somebody you don't have an agreement on. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I work on. And I'm not talking about, soft pedaling and stuff like that. We address real issues, but it's like, how do you have a discourse without being offensive? Like, I'm seriously, man. Like, I've been told this my entire life. Like,
but
man,
you
your
ain't
mouth.
offending me when you start talking about Ansars and Dr. York. My sensitivities wasn't protected.
Did I not? I kept saying the Ansars. I did not use the other names of the groups he was saying. He was using. I didn't bring in all those other groups, the names he used.
Like you never said tabernacle not once, wasn't it?
I'm not. Yeah. No, this is a trick.
Now, if you say that, you're gonna be.
I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that, Imam. Don't. No. No. You trying to trick me? I'm not falling for that. I
don't remember. You never said Nubian Islamic Hebrews?
You never said the Nawabians when Farouk was really involved?
I'm done, man. Yeah.
Hey, I kill fire. Sometimes you gotta be a jerk, right?
yeah, it
I,
works.
I know I know some as an imam, right? I know a lot of people here in Pittsburgh, they think I'm a jerk. But I have to be a jerk because if I wasn't a jerk, we wouldn't even have a masjid. It'd be burnt down to the ground. People that's in Pittsburgh know what I'm talking about. Somebody got to be a jerk and be like, listen, I ain't going to let y'all do what y'all do. What you want to do. I'll be the jerk.
No, but what I'm saying, seriously,
I'm very serious,
no,
man.
no, I understand that, right?
Mhm.
But really, and I'm not pushing you one way or the other. All I'm saying, just tell the story as it is, and let the people figure the rest of the stuff out, and we can discuss. Here's the historic fact. Now, how you think about it is another. Listen, do you think Nazis think they're wrong? The Nazis, do you
Right.
think they think they're wrong?
Right. No, right. They don't think they're wrong.
But the historical fact is what they did.
Right.
Now, how you feel about it is a whole nother story, right?
Right.
For me, when I look at the historic fact, I see things a certain way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for some people, when they look at certain movements,
Mm-hmm.
they be like Kafir, what's it called it? Musaylima, modern day Musaylima, the Musaylima letters and all this other stuff.
I caught that shot. I caught that shot. I caught that shot, Imam. But can we move? Golly, man.
See, that's what I'm talking about, right?
I actually have that book.
Everybody has their point where it just ticked them the wrong way. Everybody got that, right? So what I'm saying is we got to grow up to where we ain't hurting by the truth, right? Right. We got to get to the point where we can have a real, because we black. The problem is we lost our blackness. I think this is a consensus. I'm going to ask a question to everyone. Do you think under the Sunnah we lost our blackness as a people? In general. I'm not talking about every individual.
We didn't lose it. We didn't lose it. It was told that it was un-Islamic.
Okay, no matter what happened,
right.
We lost the portion of it.
We was told it was Asabiyah, right?
Right.
And so since it was Asabiyah, we had to be just Muslim. And that in and of itself is a whole other thing.
Right. So what I'm saying is if we be honest, there's always these guys who be like, not me. I was super dean, yeah, right, Negro, right? right. We as a whole, or we wouldn't have these conversations, right? If it wasn't something we all recognize that became a problem. Everybody's discovering that, right? So as a general rule, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurt us in our dialogue because we're the type of people, we would argue about a boxing match for weeks, a football game, a rap song. Black folks dialogue with each other and have diverse opinions, and it was always accepted in our community.
Mm-hmm.
So that's us. And when we get other people out of our affairs and telling us what to do, we can solve our own problems when we're doing it. Because me and you can have a conversation that ain't the same if somebody else is in it. If you understand the point.
No, absolutely. But I think also as a part of that, and part of that discourse, right? We don't want to dig so far in the weeds that we lose other people who may not have that depth of passion that we may have, but they're willing to participate, but they don't have that depth of passion. So it won't take much for them to lose their train of thought, or you lose, that thing that keeps them tied to it. You have people who, from my research, that were only Muslim enough because they followed a particular individual. And when that individual was unable to do the things that they felt was necessary, they kind of filtered away. They didn't say they wasn't Muslim anymore, but they stopped participating in the effort. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a requirement when you sign up for Islam that it requires effort. It requires effort. It was there for the Sahaba during their time, and it's going to be today. When you become a Muslim, there's an effort that comes with that. But what the discourse has turned to is that, hey, Islam is not some community-centered thing. It's your own personal relationship with Allah, full stop. That's it. No, it's your personal relationship with Allah in the confines of a community setting. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. And so, but when you stop at it's just you, now we're losing people, right? And yes, these discussions about creed, it has to be talked about, right? We have to get the train back on the right track. But there's a what they call a law of diminishing returns. Like, how far do you go down that track before you realize that, hey, we're kind of missing some people? Can we go down this track and do something to keep these people together at the same time? No, you know what I'm saying? I remember Imam Isan, he used to say about manna, because it's just because the people were waiting for something to happen, and it just burst out, right? So it was like we're laying the track as the train is moving. You know what I'm saying? Trying to keep up laying the track because the train is moving ahead. We have to figure out a way to kind of do both. And that is not a historical thing, although it has happened in the past. That's a here and now thing. Like that's like right now. You got 20-something-year-olds that are waiting for something that they see that they can be attached to. That's a reality. That's a reality. Like, they're not bad. You know what I'm saying? They don't feel a part. And they don't feel that they see what they're moving into as being a part of something. And you got to give people something to do to keep them in a movement. That's a real serious thing we have here. And not only that, it's not just the young men, but it's the young women too. Like these young people now, they can go out into the world and they can be appreciated for their achievements and their abilities. But what space do we have for them in the masjid to do these things? Because then it becomes, hey, well, you got to wait your turn. You got to wait your turn. But they are dynamic. And corporate America is saying, hey, you can come here and I got some money, right? They're not going to have a whole discourse about credo issues. They're going to be telling them, hey, here's something exciting you can do, and I'm going to pay you to do it. We got to do something with us that does that same thing. The thing I try to do is tell the people is that, hey, there's nothing new. We've been doing this ebb and flow of Islam where we have these people who accept Islam, but we're not transitioning into that third generation. That's been a problem. So, yeah, that's why I like talking about the research and the history, but it's all with the mindset of, hey, how do we prevent this from happening going forward? So what you're saying is true, Imam. And I agree. You know what I'm saying? When I present certain things, I'm presenting the things that have a trajectory, not that something that necessarily was just cut off. You know what I'm saying? And that we say, hey, well, we're not going to delve into that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to share something with you offline, but yeah, that.
Okay. No, we agree. I think you did a great job. I think everyone would agree that our resident historian, Akil Fahd, did an excellent job. Can we all agree with that? I think you did a great job.
Naeem. Not Imam Naeem. I was not on task. I did not understand the assignment.
I think you did a great job.
Or
And
maybe you two understood the assignment and I didn't understand the assignment. I just had my mouth all wet, all ready for lemonade, and y'all gave me some tea.
No, man, my me put the hot tea. He has some spicy tea.
I mean, hey, yo, man, we gonna keep going, man. We just starting. We have a long road to go, right? And it's cool because guess what? The more we have these discussions, people are going to ask more questions. They're going to be the others who are going to get their own platform and they're going to try to do their own stuff. And the conversation is going to be out there. We're laying track as the train is moving, as you say. I like that. We're still laying track. The train is moving. We're laying track.
Yeah, I definitely got that from Imam Ihsan, Dr. Ihsan.
Yeah, I would like to have him to have a real talk too. I'm waiting for get my shots. You know, that's like,
Dr. Ihsan, baby.
Yeah, I'm waiting for a discussion with him. Man, I want to have a real discussion with him.
He is extremely knowledgeable, and he was one of those ones, right? Because he hasn't written any memoirs or nothing like that, but that were on the ground working, creating history at the same time of doing work. You know what I'm saying?
They did that research.
Yes.
That I think was so significant.
No,
and I think that it needs a grassroots discussion that I ain't seen yet.
Right.
It takes those professional academic research and combine that with a real grassroots discussion that's not politically correct, that just goes to the heart of the matter with fearless speaking people. Yeah. I think a lot of us, we too busy acquiescing to the sensitivities of others. And our research falls on deaf ears a lot of times. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm saying is we got to have our kind of talk. I got the, intellectual, academic, politically correct talk. I got that. And it has its place. Mm-hmm. But there also need to be talks where we talk. Because we're the actually ones breathing, living communities on the ground with real people.
Right? With real problems. Problems.
So while you studying us as a science project, what about what's really happening?
But I think if you look at some of the things that man attempted, really, like seriously, I think that was a reflection of the studies of the things that impacted us. I just think that there could have been a better way of implementing it from those who are on the ground. And I'll say this because I was the chairperson of one of the share centers. I think we could have done. This is different discussion from what happened with the Dewan, but I'm saying as far as what I worked with, right? We could have done a little bit better job of articulating the issues that they emphasize, right? For example, the returning home from incarceration. That's a big piece, man. But what we failed to realize is that a lot of those brothers that was coming home, they were coming home already indoctrinated with, forms of Islam that were not conducive.
You hear what I'm talking about? This is what I'm talking about. We just had this long discussion about being honest, and here this guy go. Straight dishonesty. What the heck is that? I mean, when we ever going to be honest? It's like as if honesty was a crime.
No, right?
You will now face 50 years in prison for telling the truth.
Sometimes it made it, kind of difficult to mesh with them right away, And and then you had the Healthy Marriage Initiative. That was good. That was solid. We need that for our community. But how do you get people to abide by the the precepts of it. You know what I'm saying? No drive-by marriages. Do you know how much trauma we could stop in the community if the people would just have some type of mediation before they get married, or actually marry in a above board manner with the family involved? That would create so much more goodwill and eliminate a lot of the trauma. You know what I'm saying? That's a problem. Those things were real, and I think those things, if we could have really touched the people who needed to be touched with that, I think it would have been a much better, much better. But anyway, that's another issue.
All right, Imam Naeem is totally dissatisfied with us. We're in the doghouse for the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whenever you decide to come back.
But hold on, I'm not totally in the doghouse. I've admitted my part in this, but
you're not in the doghouse. I was just looking at comments. That's all.
Oh, is that bad? I can't see any of the comments.
No, it's not bad.
Let me give one brother who's dying for some of my attention. It is important. I give him a little bit of attention. Nail, it's not that I don't care about your feelings. I just think your salvation is more important than your feelings. I do care about your feelings, but I'm more concerned about your salvation. That was for Nail. He had to get something.
Oh, Nail is in the comments.
He's been trying to get my attention all night, so I figured I'd give him a little.
Nail is my guy, man. I got love for Nail, man.
All right, we're gonna close out at I hope we benefited something. You know, we ain't get all of what Imam Naeem wanted, but we got some of it, and we got all of what we wanted, didn't we, Akil? We dug in that joint, right? Not everybody can win.
I took the bait, though. I took the bait. I'm gonna be honest. I took the bait.
But after we finish telling this whole story, it's gonna be some juicy dissecting.
No
doubt. We gotta tell the story first. What was his question? Let me give you a question, Abdul Kareem. All right, we gotta get one more question, then we out of here.
Okay.
While you looking for his question, right? Do y'all both remember when we had Imam Asim on Rahimahullah?
Yes.
The first time. Now, do y'all remember this moment when we Imam Asim Rahimahullah said that they weren't learning from the books of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and then he mentioned that they were learning from the books of Muhammad ibn Sulaiman at-Tamimi? Do y'all remember that?
I don't remember.
I remember him saying that.
Yes, he said it.
Yeah,
and it, to me, it was like, because subhanAllah, because you had mentioned it in several of your Facebook posts, Akil Fahad, that people here, they say they remember. Our beautiful Imam didn't realize back then that person, Muhammad ibn Sulaiman at-Tamimi, was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab.
Yeah, but I posted that.
That's what I'm saying. But he didn't realize. He didn't even realize it when we had him on a few months ago.
Because they changed the language in the books. You see what I'm saying? They changed the whole language of the books.
Exactly. So it went from a subtle push to an overt push. And that's why a lot of times people say, oh, we weren't learning this, or we weren't learning that. The question was, were you learning it and you didn't know you were learning it? Everything ain't black and white.
And I'll give you an example. And I would have loved for Abu Muslim to come on, right, for this issue.
Right.
Because he has some unique positions that would shock most of us. Right. And if we have real talk and nobody get in their feelings, we just deal with facts, you'll be shocked how much we can help each other. Right? When we just like, listen, man, I know this may hurt, but we're gonna have this conversation. You'll be
Mm.
shocked what we will learn. I'll give you an example. We going too long. I can't give that example, so I'm gonna let that go. Right? But we all right. We'll talk about that later. But let's take this question. Because that's a whole nother hour discussion if I open up that can of worms, so I'm gonna close it. Do
Imams on
y'all
the panel, do you agree? Do you feel once the Akida talk amongst our people is addressed between us, a lot of us would get straightened up in time, or run away out of cognitive dissonance? You want to answer that?
I mean,
Who?
y'all
I'm not
say imams.
talking, ma'am.
All right,
Give
Hussein is
up,
on the
Mike.
panel.
So
His-
clearly, that's for you, ma'am. I mean,
what I believe this, right? I believe when the Akida talk is clearly laid out, not an argument, a discussion, a clear discussion, I believe we're going to learn how all of us feel. We're not going to be confused. And then many of us will be able to deal with other issues because we've survived, we've overcame the issues that's dividing us, and we'll learn how to work within the context of the division. That's what I believe. We have the discussion. All the facts is out on the table. We look at them. We see what we disagree about, why we disagree about it. We make our decision, say, all right, that's done. Now, how are we going to move forward on things we can agree about? And not let the things we disagree about prevent us from moving forward. But so long as we hide those things we disagree about them, we're going to sabotage our movements together. That's my belief. What do you think, Imam Naeem?
My answer is this. When a lot of times, and I'm speaking about myself, and I know many other people experience this, when you first start teaching, regardless if you're an imam or not, especially if you're teaching in one place like a masjid or something like that. And when you teach on an issue and it's clear, a lot of times the teacher becomes deluded that everybody understands and is going to act according because you presented that issue one time in one khutbah or one class or one lecture. People don't work like that. And if you teach regularly, you understand that.
Right.
It's something that you have to teach regularly. You have to be diligent about it. And a lot of people feel like this Akida maybe is too much. The reason why it's too much, the reason why we have to be dogmatic is because the pendulum is on the other side. It's on the other extreme. So we have to bring it back to the other extreme just to make a balance. So to answer the question, I don't believe that the Akida issue is ever going to be over. Everybody's never going to agree. But I think the reality is once we get a core group that is firm on what the proper creed is, and we are moving forward with other issues, that we have to recognize that, okay, just because we have a core group that understands the proper creed, we don't stop talking about creed. We have to still keep teaching the creed for other people who may come later, other people who may not understand. Teaching the creed is part of Islam. You don't just teach it once and stop teaching it. Just like you don't start teaching fiqh one time. You don't teach Akhdar or Asmawiya and then that's it. You stop. Same thing with the Sawaf. It's not one class of Sufism, then it's over with. You keep teaching, you keep revising, you keep renewing, you keep getting firmer, and your knowledge keeps getting deeper and deeper. So it's the same thing with creed, right? So a lot of times our dialogue and our rhetoric is uh, aimed at letting people know, hey, listen, what you think is Islam is not Islam. But at a certain point, even when we're talking internally or when we're preaching to the choir, to say it another way, we're not going to never talk about creed because we're never going to know all that it is to know about creed. Just like with anything else, you get deeper. So to answer your question, some people are going to run away out of cognitive dissonance. Some people are doing it right now. Cognitive dissonance is when a person holds two or more beliefs that contradict each other at the same time, and they find coping mechanisms to make it acceptable that, hey, I believe these two things, and these things don't agree with one another. But in their mind, they cope to make it seem like it's one and the same. What you're seeing is cognitive dissonance taking place right now in front of our face, right now. So I hope I answered your question.
But here's the other thing. You know, I like to read. I'm a researcher too. I just do different type of research. Here's my thing. The default position for people who oppose al-Ash'ariyya or Maturidiyya is Wahhabiyya in its forms. So when they say stop talking about Aqidah, what they're really saying, don't say Ash'ari and Maturidi. And when we knock down Ash'ari Maturidi, what is left with us is Wahhabi in its various forms. Because that's the default position that has already been pushed to the people. So what you're really saying is push our creed and leave your creed to the side and we'll all get along, if you understand my point. There's a default position. So even those fake Sufis who have crazy kufr ideas in their mind, that stuff, it doesn't represent the Ash'ariyya and Maturidiyya, which were the really Sufis. So you understand what I'm saying? If you listen to people with creed and you listen to them, that they say, I'm not Ash'ari and Maturidi, explain your creed, you'll see some crazy ideas about Islam, about belief in Allah, about Allah's relation with creation. You'll see some weird stuff that contradicts Ash'ari and Maturidi. So it ain't just names, it's actually creeds.
Did y'all
And
see
you
that?
get your real Musalima papers, Imam Naim, when you hear some crazy Sufi talk in the name of Tasawwuf that doesn't follow Aqidah of Ash'ari and Maturidi. You hear the kufr that comes from them, it'll shake your heart when you start really, really thinking about it. And you from Africa, a lot of that is witch doctors in the name of Tasawwuf. Am I right or wrong?
La shak, no doubt. I seen it and heard it myself.
Right. And you got a bunch of us getting on it. Seriously. And I'm not talking about Salafis. I'm talking about people who claim to be Sufi, who say, no Ash'ari Maturidi, no Madhab. Let's just be Ma'rifa. Yeah, okay. And I ain't talking about Salafis, and I'm not talking about Wahhabis. I'm talking about fake Sufis who don't learn the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Yeah, I'm talking about them.
It's a struggle.
So now, guess what? We got our black people talking about I want to be Sufi and falling into blasphemy in the name of being Sufi. We're not talking about Wahhabi. We're talking about Sufi. If you understand what I'm saying. So put that in your Sufi pipe and smoke it. Stop. No, we got to be fair. Right?
No doubt.
We want to sit around and talk about Wahhabis and Salafi, but on the same time, we got crazy stuff going on in the name of so-called Ahl Sunnah. You got to be fair. You got to be fair. You got to be fair.
Very important. Very important.
Got to be fair. Right? All right. I done threw enough Scud missiles to last me a month. Stop. All right. Let's go. Y'all want to close this out?
Go ahead, man.
I seen some lives go for like 5 hours. You know, we could do that.
Nah, we got to call it because I got to travel.
The Minister of Interior.
I got to get on the road tomorrow. I got to go sit around some real Sufis, right? Who are Ash'ari and Maturidi. You know, I got other stuff to do. I can't just sit around here and argue with goofy Sufis. I can't do it. Sorry. You know, giving Tasawwuf a terrible name.
Imam, you are embracing your jerkiness.
Hey man, listen.
Instead of turning away from it, you are embracing it. you got to stop embracing it, man.
You didn't tell me where I can sign up to, Jerkness Anonymous or something. Help me out here.
Akil Faha, you need to really consider tapping into your jerkness.
No,
Feel it.
no.
Let it permeate your every being.
No,
Embrace it.
I have turned the page on that. I want to be kinder and gentler.
Kinder and gentler is boring. Just tap into that jerkness.
Oh man.
You know the traditional story of Islam has never been told to us yet as a people.
Yeah.
Classical, traditional Sunni Islam, as it has been for decades and decades and decades, hasn't been told to us yet. That's a sad commentary, man. Our people have still, after all this time, not learned traditional, continuous, unbroken Islamic knowledge. Everybody always throwing us some crap.
But that's the thing, though. So, what we have to do, though, right, is it boils down to the teaching, right? The knowledge is out there, right? But it has to be taught. It has to be taught. And
can I read something?
Alhamdulillah.
I'm going to show you. I'll translate it, but I'll show you something. This was so interesting to me. So I'm here on this line. Let me see if I can twist the book towards. Can y'all see that? You see that?
You see it. But go ahead, Imam.
Where it's talking, I can't read backwards, but you see what it says, Imam Naeem?
No, it's too small.
All right. Well, his is Al-Albani. He said, they asked him, what is the difference between the Salafis and the other Muslims, right? He said that the difference between the Salafis and the other Muslims is a difference of methodology, right? He said the Muslims of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are divided in terms of Aqidah into two groups, Al-Maturidiyya wal Asha'ira. He said, and this is in Tawheed and Aqidah. And in the Islamic rulings, there are four schools, Hanafiya, Malikiya, Shafiya, Hanabila, right? Or Hanbaliya. Then he said, the Salafis in Aqidah, meaning the Salafis, they follow the creed of the Salaf, right? That's what he said. What did he say the Muslims from Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah are? Maturidis and Ash'ari. It's Al-Albani. He said that. Right there. That's Al-Albani. He recognized Ahl Sunnah as Al-Ash'ari al-Maturidiyya. He said it. That's his book. His fatwa, his words. He said it right there. So even the one who's opposing them, mentioning that Ahl Sunnah were known as Ash'aris and Maturidis. He said two groups. That's it. He didn't name nobody else. He said Ash'aris, Maturidis. The text is there. But do they tell us that? Nope. Nope. So, and he's opposed to that. He's saying we Salafi. But he mentioned the Muslims who are from Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah are the Maturidis and the Ash'aris. He said it. It's his book.
He doesn't need to say it. That's a historical fact.
Oh, from the historic. But guess what black people don't know? What? Come on.
History.
Keep it real. History.
And they be making up history. Meta history.
Yeah.
So here's my point. So now we arguing with our own people about something that's a historic fact. And you got our people talking about some, no, he's just one. Imam Amin is a crazy Ash'ari Maturidi. When even the people who were knowledgeable, who disagree with them, said that the Ahl Sunnah were Maturidis and Ash'aris. What greater person to say that than Al-Albani? I mean, I don't think you can get a greater figure to discuss that issue and say that as a, if we want to use proof, we already said that. Now, Al-Albani tells you the same thing. And now where you go? We all don't know history, right?
Right. So I mean, it's a reality, but I'm saying we still have to remember that we are people. Like that's the thing that, like, we can't, it's like if we're on a...
Can I ask you a question though, quick?
Yes.
Why is it fair for everyone else to discuss it, but when we discuss it, it's a problem? Tell me.
Because
why the double standard?
Because the one that knows is held more in account than the one who doesn't know.
But that wasn't my question. They can discuss it and it's fine. If we discuss it, it's problematic.
Who is the they?
I said this Al-Albani.
Oh, okay.
I gave you the words he said about Wahhabiyya.
Right.
I gave you, so he's the they, and he's the leader of the they in our communities. Right. Why can he discuss it? It's fine, but if we discuss it, it's fitna.
Because they have a better marketing plan. And they got shiny books, and they make it real interesting.
No, and black folks become self-censoring.
I'm not being facetious. I'm telling you, it's much easier to disseminate information when you make it more digestible to the people. You know what I'm saying? As long as the traditional, if we keep on having, the same big books, and it's a litany of explanation upon explanation, and we don't make it more concise, the same information, make it more concise. Our people have a short attention span, right? If it don't got no juice to it, So explaining the creed is going to seem old and dusty as opposed to someone. Now, it's not me. I'm saying, but from what is being the most how can I say, prevalent amongst our people, right? Those books that were produced that are short, glossy, tend to cover and be read by more people than the ones that are thicker and more in depth. This is just a fact, right? So you got to know what battle you in.
And guess what? You know what we've learned? That's why these platforms, Scattered Thoughts and Black Imams Roundtable and Post-Fajr Reflections, and a little bit of spice and a little bit of stuff, because we like that. But at the same time, we're teaching them the correct creed.
Alhamdulillah.
We don't have money to do glossy books. We ain't got enough donations for that. But we can teach.
But I think that's an effort that we might really need to visit. You know what I'm saying? Is, hey, it's like some of these masajids, hey, would you be willing to accept this set of books that are digestible and readable to the people? You know what I'm saying? That make it more accessible. Everybody's not going to do the deep dive. It's just not going to happen.
Right. We agree.
In my own community, right? I pray subtle. You know how many times somebody came to me and asked me, was I Shia? How long was I?
Yeah, y'all Malikis are Shia.
Or if you either ask me, what am I Shia? Or they'll be like, was I part of another community?
y'all Malikis better fix y'all stuff. Y'all got Shias, Y'all got goofy Sufis. Y'all got Atharis. Boy, y'all better protect your madhab. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
You got some Shafis that's deviant too.
Oh, that's what you're gonna do. That's what you're gonna respond with. Oh my God, I'm done. That's her
All right.
response.
I love y'all. We had enough fun for the night, and this is what I love about being black. We can have some fun yet still discuss serious issues, and we know it's all love, nothing but love.
Man,
Okay, so
how many comments is down there? I can't see any of that.
about 1,000. You'll see. Because people enjoy it. They love this. They're having their time. They're kicking it. We're relating. We're being us, and it's fine. That's right, Issa. This is one place where I agree. The Malikis must protect their space. I agree. I second your point, Issa. All right, come on, Imam Naeem, close us out.
I agree, hands down.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Imam Naeem, close us out.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah
Thank you, Akil. Really, may Allah reward you. We really appreciate you.
Alhamdulillah.
We appreciate you. We love you. And you always got a space with us.
I just got to go put some salve on these arrow holes.
It's all good. We with you.
Alhamdulillah. All right, you really ready this time?
Yes, ready.
No.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to learn from this history, take lessons from it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unify us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in knowledge. May Allah increase us in sincerity. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our children better than us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our children inherit and pick up the mantle and take it to a level better or higher than we have taken it. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wastaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow.